it's my pleasure to introduce our featured speaker for the session, Secretary Pete Buttigieg, who was sworn in on February 3rd, 2021 as the 19th Secretary of Transportation. Prior to joining the Biden-Harris administration, Secretary Buttigieg served 2 terms as mayor of his hometown of South Bend, Indiana. A graduate of Harvard University and a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford, Secretary Buttigieg served for 7 years as an officer in the U.S. Navy Reserve, which included a deployment to Afghanistan in 2014. He made history when he became the first openly gay person confirmed to serve in a presidential cabinet. Now, he leads the administration's efforts on the American Jobs Plan to build back better. I hope you enjoy his remarks and the discussion that will follow. Welcome, Secretary Buttigieg.
Hello, everyone. It is an honor to be here and great to be addressing so many leaders. In 1987, the late Representative Edward Roybal, one of the founders of CHCI, said, "If we don't invest in the Hispanic population today, we will pay the consequences tomorrow." That truth is something you all know well. For decades, CHCI has educated, empowered, and invested in thousands of young Latinos. Today, your alumni are lawyers and public servants, activists and advocates. They shape policy at the highest levels of our government, and a remarkable number of them have been the first in their families to graduate from college. CHCI opened doors of opportunity for so many young people, and in turn, they went on to hold those doors open for the generations that followed. It's a testament to the impact of your work that so many of your alumni still volunteer and contribute their time, their money, and their wisdom to this organization. In truth, federal policy has not always invested in Latino communities the way that this organization has. And indeed, there have been consequences. This past year has been a painful reminder that institutional disinvestment in Latino communities can have devastating consequences. We've seen the numbers. Hispanics and Latinos 4 times more likely to be hospitalized from COVID-19 as whites, and more likely to lose their lives. Latinos account for 16% of the population, but 23% of the initial job losses last year. And a net total of over 1 million Latinas and Hispanic women lost their jobs since the start of the pandemic. That's not acceptable, and it's an example of why racial equity is a key element of every part of this administration's agenda. Take the American Jobs Plan. It calls for $85 billion to modernize and expand our transit systems, and it doubles the federal funding for public transit, partly in the knowledge that communities of color are twice as likely to depend on transit. It invests $20 billion to reconnect neighborhoods that have been torn apart by past highway projects, in the knowledge that those projects have too often ignored or even actively harmed underserved populations. It includes another $20 billion to improve road safety, fixes 20,000 miles of roads, highways, and main streets, in the knowledge that Black and brown pedestrians are often more likely to be killed in traffic fatalities. Beyond transportation infrastructure, the President's plan also provides for universal broadband so children everywhere can access the same educational opportunities. It replaces 100% of lead pipes, so no one has to drink unsafe water simply because of where they live. And it raises wages and benefits for care workers who are disproportionately Latinas and often other women of color. Most important of all, the American Jobs Plan will create millions of good-paying jobs, union jobs, most of which are available whether you have a college degree or not. And we're making sure that these jobs and these resources go to the people who will benefit the most. Across the board, 40% of the climate and clean infrastructure investments in this plan will go to underserved and overburdened communities. There are some who have had a hard time understanding that racial equity is part of transportation infrastructure. But it's a simple matter of reality. Look at air quality. In the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic region, the air contains 75% more pollutants in Latino neighborhoods than in white neighborhoods. And that is a consequence of things like the availability of public transit and the routes that highways go through, as well as other environmental justice factors. Different racial groups breathing different air. This shows up in higher rates of hospitalization and even deaths from asthma for Hispanic residents. This is an example of why clean air is a racial justice issue, and why transportation policy is an equity issue. It's why the investments that we make now must be robust, They must be forward-looking, and they must reflect the inputs and the needs of every community. Thanks to the work of CHCI, Latino communities have a strong voice in this conversation. Investing in America must mean investing in Latino communities, and no one knows how to do that better than CHCI. In the coming months and years, I'm looking forward to continuing to work together to confront the challenges and seize the opportunities that await us. Thank you, and keep up your great work.